Word on Wednesday. Good evening, my brothers and sisters. This is Dr. Lewis Tait, pastor of the Village Church. This is our master class that we're teaching this fall. I hope that you are safe and that you've had an enjoyable day. As you are perhaps joining us on Facebook, or you could be joining us on Twitter or Twitch, or YouTube. So however you may be joining us, we want to thank you for being present with us this evening. And we want you just to kind of like and share our study tonight with some folks. Do it at the bottom of your page, and I'm trying to do the same thing, and so we can do it together and share what we are going to study tonight. And hope to get a pen and something to write with so you can really kind of be engaged with what we are doing. And good to see you, Denise, Dennis, I'm sorry, Chesley. Hope you can invite some of your friends on tonight for this masterclass. It has really been a great day. It's like many of you, it's been an involved day. Some of you may be still at work or getting off work or whatever you may be doing. But we are grateful to God for protecting us for even the challenges that we face. I want to begin. If you can, like I said, like and share and let people know that we're on. Want to begin with prayer tonight, and I want to especially pray for my Aunt Maggie and my Uncle Sonny and Michelle, who is their daughter, and all the people who are connected to our family and their family. Just pray for her health, her spirit, and that God will just bless her and keep her. She's been dealing with cancer for a while, and so we just pray that she's being cared for in the best way possible. So let's pray. God, we're just grateful for an opportunity to share again tonight, to kind of look at your word and discover some things about ourselves and about you. We pray that God, that we'll never stop asking questions. We'll never be afraid to ask questions, and also we won't be afraid to shift some of our thinking in terms of ways in which we have been enculturated, the ways we've been indoctrinated, and the ways we have come to construct reality in this cultural context called the United States of America. I pray that you would use this time to allow us to just study together and think together and hopefully come out doing something about what we think and what we learn. This is my prayer in Jesus' name, amen. All right, so tonight we're sort of back at it again. Like I said, I hope that you like and share. I'm dealing with this sort of general theme called authentic change can happen, and because sometimes we have change, but really is it authentic? And authentic just means that it's real. Sometimes change, people say they've changed, or they say society is changing, but it's very superficial. Particularly when you don't deal with the systemic issues and roots of things, even in yourself. A lot of times it takes some real work emotionally and psychically and spiritually to get down and really deal with some of the things we need to work on. And that's if you want to. Sometimes you may feel that everything is wonderful and you don't need to do anything, and that's good too. So tonight, I want to go back to John chapter 5. It's a very powerful passage here, John chapter 5, verses 1 through 15 from the New Living Translation of the Bible. So I hope that you find it. John chapter 5, yeah, verses 1 through 15 from the New Living Translation of the Bible. And it just reads this way. After Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holidays, remember Jesus was a Jew, so he did observe the holidays. It doesn't mean that sometimes he did things that the elders didn't particularly like, but he did observe them. He knew when they were. And so inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda with 5 covered porches. Picture that in your mind. It's almost like a 5-sided pool with porches on either side. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" That's what he asked him. He just asked him. Seems like a simple question, but it also can almost seem like, are you kidding me, Jesus? I've been here for 38 years. And he asked me, would I like to get well? And then verse 7, the man responds, "I can't, sir." The sick man said, "For I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else gets there ahead of me." Jesus told him, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath. Remember that. It happened on the Sabbath, which is a high and holy day. Would be considered what Protestants we call Sunday, but the Sabbath really actually is on the Saturday. And he says, so the Jewish leaders objected. They said to the man, who cured you? You can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry that sleeping mat. And think about that. They don't have no care that this man he had been sick for 38 years. They're more worried about him keeping tradition, a ritualistic law, than him being healed. So they say, well, you can't carry your mat on the Sabbath because that's like working. But he replied, the man who healed me told me, pick up your mat and walk. So that means Jesus was countercultural. He was like, if you want to get well, then you have to, he's told the first man, he said, I want you to stand up, and then I want you to pick up your mat, and then I want you to walk. You think Jesus wasn't aware of Jewish custom and tradition? I think he was. Who says such a thing as that? They demanded. The man didn't know, for Jesus had disappeared into the crowd. But afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and told him, now you are well, so stop sinning, or something even worse may happen to you. Then the man went and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had healed him. This is a very powerful passage. And we've been kind of talking these past few weeks just about this whole idea of authentic change. What does it mean to have, authentic change? And just, I was going to give you a little refresher of what we talked about. Real change happens in your mind. It starts in your mind. And it stops with how you perceive things, your perception of reality, how you perceive. Like, you could perceive, I was watching something the other day, and it was a movie, and the guy said, half of our armed forces have left. And the other guy said, well, we still have half. So it's how you see, your perception of reality, and your beliefs, those things that you actually believe in. Sometimes they come from how you were raised. If you were raised in, spiritual or religious tradition, you may get some beliefs from there. People have all kinds of beliefs. Sometimes they're based on their connection with God or with Jesus, and sometimes they're not. Or sometimes it could be a combination of a lot of different things. And your thoughts. So your perception, how you perceive something, and then your thoughts, how you think. So I want to go a little deeper tonight, and we'll sort of come back to the mindset. But I want to look at this pool of Bethesda for a minute in Jerusalem. Was where sick people gathered. This is where they went. They gathered with the hopes of being cured of their illnesses. That's why they went there, because they thought that they would be healed. This bubbling of the water was said that the story is that an angel would come down and visit this water, and it would bubble up. And when it bubbled up, that meant that that was the time for you to get in, if you were nearby, to be healed. I don't know if that's true or not, but you have to think about there. In this context, people are gathered there looking to be healed. The Aramaic word for Bethesda means house of mercy or house of grace in the English. And these people who came, who were sick, some of them were lame, some of them were blind, and various types of illnesses, they would lounge at one of these 5 porticos or porches adjacent to the pool. And ill people waited, the sick people waited and watched for an angel to stir the water. And the hopeful diseased people at the poolside believed that the first person to step into the water after an angel stirred it, it was healed. And near the pool of Bethesda was a sheep gate. It was called because there was a sheep market, and we'll talk about these gates in a minute. But when I thought about this, I said, wow, how can it be that at the house of mercy, where healings were supposedly taking place, that a man for 38 years remained sick? How could that happen? Yeah, I like that, Jack. Thank you. It's like going to the old time tent meeting where people came for, like, I'm going to post it up so y'all can see that. Yes. I mean, so, you think about it, you people are coming expecting to be healed. Yes. And then there's this other sort of historical stuff about the Romans who had sort of these medicinal pools that were nearby because they took these medicinal baths. And this is not far-fetched because, we do stuff today with water and taking baths and soaking and a lot of things that people practice, whether it's massage therapy or Reiki, a lot of different things to sort of get a kind of healing. And so you think about, though, here's this man, he's in the place of healing, but it seems like healing always evades him. He just doesn't happen. And then here comes this Jesus asking him, do you want to be made well? And his response, was, I can't, sir, because I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else gets there ahead of me. But listen to what Jesus said. Jesus didn't ask him why he was not well. He asked this man, would you like to get well? Let's think about that for a moment. He didn't ask him why. In other words, he wasn't really there to blame the man for his situation. He didn't ask them why. Sometimes we always ask people why instead of what happened to you. Why are you doing bad? Well, what happened to you? Jesus didn't really ask him anything that would cause him to doubt himself or to think that something was wrong with himself. He just asked him, "Would you like to get well?" And think about that. Sometimes when you are desiring something to happen in your life, think about the questions you ask yourself. Think about the way you even talk to yourself. Do you want this thing to happen for you? Do you expect something different than you've had before, or do you ask a question in such a way that you don't even believe that there's an answer for it? You don't believe that something's going to happen. And listen, these are hurting people at this place of healing, and I'm not sure if healing took place at this pool or not, but they're hurting people there. But this day, this man is going to be made well. Now, one of the things I want you to think about is how uh, is how we think about stuff. What gets into our psyche, what dominates our thought patterns. What causes us to think a certain kind of way. And the interesting thing, some of us we haven't thought about, you know, how a single thought can make all the difference in the world. How it could really change the trajectory of your life or your situation. Just a thought, but sometimes we've been talked out of thinking, talked out of perceiving things a certain way, because we've minimized how powerful our thinking is. And I had to be reminded sometimes, you think that you don't have any power. Sometimes you have more power than you think. All right, so that's one of the things that I want us to kind of think about. Listen, um, Kirby John, um, Kurt Barron Jones, he has a book, and it's called Joyful Adventure of. It's called Holy Play: The Joyful Adventure of Unleashing Your Divine Purpose. And he has this quote in there, and I want to read it. And he says, "If changing our thoughts can result in amazing positive transformation, why do we so vigorously resist changing what we believe about things?" I hope you can get that in. I hope you can get that in your spirit, because I want to read it again, and I want to enlarge it a bit, so hopefully you will catch it and it'll get in your spirit. And he says, if changing our thoughts can result in amazing positive transformations, why do we so vigorously resist changing what we believe about things? That is, that's the lingering question. I think for a lot of us. I mean, I'll be honest. I've struggled there. When you know if you're changing our thoughts can result in amazing positive transformation, then why do we so vigorously resist changing what we believe about things? Give you an example, prime example. All of us have experienced COVID-19. All of us have, if we're still here living, we've lived through a pandemic, and we're still experiencing the residual effects of the pandemic. And underserved communities are, are not bouncing back, uh, like other folks, because a lot of times they were already in situations where they were already vulnerable. They were already being sort of exploited and all kinds of other things, whether it was health disparities or economic disparities, educational, you name it. But the thing is, COVID gave all of us, I think, as a nation, as a people, uh, particularly in this country and in other places, to a moment to reimagine how we could do things, how we could function in the world in a different kind of way. For instance, people found out that they can actually, there's many jobs that they can do from home without driving, you know, hours commute one way or 2 hours every day. And there's some jobs you can't you can't do from home. You can't clean the office from home. You can't do construction from home. You can't do plumbing from home or be an electrician from your home. There's certain things that you can't do a lot of. If you have to do surgery, and right now you can't do that from home. But there are a lot of telehealth things that can be done from the doctor's office or from his house and you at your residence. And there are a lot of ways we found out that we can live and actually add to our lives because you're not traveling. You don't have the stress of sitting in traffic and all of that kind of stuff. But some people didn't take that opportunity. Some industries, even churches struggle. I'm not saying that everybody should just be virtual, never go back to a building, but we had an opportunity to look at how we could re-engage, how we could look at things in a different way, and in some ways we missed it. I know a lot of schools, universities. Howard was one. They made some shifts in their social work program where you could go part time online, you can be full time, or you can come to the campus. Where other schools want to go back to business as usual and missed an opportunity to probably add more students and all those kind of things. So sometimes it's amazing if you're changing your thoughts how it can result in amazing transformations. I mean, just the little things. Sometimes, yes, we all get exhausted, we get tired, and sometimes you have to take what we call a power nap. But then when you have things to do, you have to figure out how do I push a little bit harder, and then take the rest that you need. Or sometimes you don't need that little push a little harder. Sometimes you need to rest right away. Um, this is the thing I want you to think about as we're looking at this text. Now, the sheep gate is very interesting as it pops up on our radar because in the text in the text it talks about this Bethesda was near the sheep gate, and the sheep gate in ancient walls of Jerusalem there were many gates, but there was a north gate of the city by which animals were brought in from surrounding areas for sacrifice. And some scholars said it was called the sheep gate. So remember, they had this system where the way they approached God in their worship of God is that they offered animal sacrifice. Now today, if we talked about animal sacrifices, we would have the Humane Society um, arresting us for being inhumane to animals. But this was over 2,000 years ago, and this is how they understood um, their relationship was with God was offering sacrifices, animal sacrifices, and bird sacrifices, and produce sacrifices, grain and wheat sacrifices, every a bunch of sacrifices. But if we would go back, and we're not going to do that today, and look at Nehemiah, just giving this for your own notes, Nehemiah chapter 3, verses 1 through 32, it talks about these gates. Um, and once Nehemiah, remember, he announced his plan to rebuild the wall, and the work began. There were 42 groups of people working on specific areas of the wall, and everybody could play a part: the priests, the leaders, the craftsmen, the Jews from other cities. And there were 10 gates mentioned in the rebuilding of the wall. 10 gates: the sheep gate, the Fish Gate, the Old Gate, the Valley Gate, the Dung Gate, the Fountain Gate, the Water Gate, the Horse Gate, the East Gate, and the Inspection Gate. Now it's interesting that the Sheep Gate, um, uh, they consecrated and they hung doors on it. Sheep Gate was the first gate to be restored. It was rebuilt by the high priest and his fellow priests. And note, this was the only gate that was consecrated or set apart as holy. And it was used for bringing in sacrifices for the temple. It was called the sheep gate because it was the entrance for the sheep entering into the temple compound from the sheep markets where the lambs were sold for sacrifice in the temple. So they would sell these lambs to people. They would buy them, and then they would bring them in to be sacrificed. All right, and 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 later it was also called a sheep pool, later known as the pool of Bethesda, where sheep were washed for sacrificing. Now you think about it. Here's Jesus. He is at the pool of Bethesda, and he's performing a miracle, and it's in the vicinity of the sheep gate. Now we really know that Jesus sort of represents um, this sacrifice, this sort of what we call a Paschal lamb. And so when we think about what Jesus was doing and how he was doing it, he was always ingenious to sort of bring attention to um, what was happening around him and what he was involved with. And he knew he was going to be sacrificed. He knew that his own people and the Romans, not God, because people got to put this on God. No, I don't think God will kill his own son. That's a conversation for another day. But he knew with his what he was doing, the teachings, the things he did, that he wasn't engendering a lot of friendship with the people in power. Now, the poor, the sick, the lame, uh, they probably really embraced Jesus. They probably had, of course, a lot of them followed because they wanted the miracles and they wanted what Jesus did in terms of feeding the 5,000 and all these other things, probably things that are not recorded. But in terms of the power structure, he was doing things that seemed to be very subtle to us, but they were countercultural, and those in power didn't like it, and so that put him in danger. That's why Jesus died as a dissident. He died as a government sort of threat because he was hung on a Roman cross. Even in and in that, when you think about where he in proximity to where this miracle's happening in the sheep who were brought into that area to be sacrificed. Here's Jesus. Sort of people can make these connections that perhaps here he is reminding us of perhaps of the sacrifice he's going to make himself. Um, and it's challenging though, because when you start to look and understand, um, even in Jesus himself, had this kind of thinking that that regardless of the danger, perhaps he knew he was in, he had a message that had to get out. He had a lifestyle and a model that he wanted people to follow. He came sort of to shake things up, and when people normally are considered revolutionaries or considered countercultural, powerful entities and institutions, a lot of times don't allow them to survive. Whether it's in our times a Marcus Garvey or whether it's Malcolm X or Tupac's mother Shakur, who's still sort of hiding, if you will, in Cuba, and countless numbers of people. John Brown, who was a white man, who was, but they made sure that he didn't survive because he was abolitionist. He was a true abolitionist, and so Jesus comes in that kind of vein as one that represents people who have been unrepresented, and by healing this man at the pool of Bethesda, I think what Jesus was demonstrating to everybody who witnessed this is that if when you change your perception of your reality, things can happen to you. You don't have to wait for the water to be troubled for you to be healed. You just have to get in your mind that this is what you want. This is what you want to obtain. And sometimes the healing or whatever it is that we're asking for could come in various ways. It's not always the way we think it is. It could be in many ways. Many times we get very upset when, rightfully so, when people pass. But sometimes we don't understand all the fullness of what is going on, even in that moment, or what is happening. Usually, there's birth that's coming, there's new life that's coming, and the person who is transitioned is always with us, and their lives they live on. We don't know in what form. People talk about heaven. We don't know exactly where that is, but we have this sense that we will be with them again, but also that they're still with us now because we we celebrate them. We celebrate them as ancestors. We celebrate them as people who continually contribute to our lives by their memories, by what they left us. So that's what I want to leave you with tonight. The thing is, yeah, it is very challenging to have authentic change, but it can happen. And just like in this text, sometimes we can be in a place where we ought to be thriving, but because of our mindsets, we are not. So I want to leave it there. All right. So I pray that you enjoyed our Bible study for this evening. I do want to invite you to share in our ministry. You can always support us through your tithes and offerings, and you can give it on Givelify, you can go through Cash App, and in any way you desire. So listen, tonight before you leave, and if you listen to this broadcast later, you can always make a contribution to the Village Church through Cash App, through Givelify. And remember that all of your gifts are tax deductible. Go to our website and find previous sermons. Keep up with what we are doing in terms of events. And don't forget, this is Clergy Appreciation Month. I want to show Elder Jackie some appreciation for the work that she's doing. And she's in the chaplaincy program now, and it's very challenging. So we want to pray for her too and keep her in our prayers. But she's doing a very good job. We're very proud of her. And so we want to do that. So if you have an opportunity to give tonight, whatever small amount or large amount, any amount will be appreciated. So I want to just thank you for being on this broadcast. I want to thank you for just your contribution to us, and I just want to thank you. Don't forget Sunday. Our worship starts at 9 a.m. and also come back in again at 11 a.m. and keep us in prayer. I'm wearing this sort of pink, this kind of pink skull cap because this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I want to make sure that we lift up, particularly women, but also men who are experiencing cancer. My father basically died because he had prostate cancer. 1996, he was 63 years old. And so make sure you get your mammograms and make sure that you do all that you need to do to take care of yourself. I want to close out with a prayer. God, thank you for what our hearts have received, what our minds have been able to think through. I pray, God, that you would bless these words and And we offer tonight this master class. Maybe someone's life will be made better. Maybe our world, if we can think differently about each other, not think that one is superior to the other, or that even the skin color of another individual makes them less or more than the other, or their sexuality, and whether they're male or female, or whatever their sexual preference may be, that we don't judge people or consider them less, or whatever their ethnic group is. Sometimes we judge people by where they're from and what ethnic group they're part of. I pray, God, that we'll start to really think and how we can really create authentic change. This is my prayer. In your son's name, amen. So have a wonderful and blessed evening. God bless.